Okay, Parshas Bo, Pasuk Gimel. Yova Moshe v'Aaron el Paro. Moshe and Aaron, they come to Paro, v'yomer Elov, and they say to him, Komer Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. This is what Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. Ad Mosai me'anto leotz miponoi. To what point do you refuse to humble yourself before me? Shalchami v'avduni. Send out my people and let them serve me. So firstly, we have discussed in the past, when Moshe Rabbeinu first came to Paro, he had said, Hashem Elokei Yisrael Shlachani Aleichem. We discussed this. He used the appellation Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Elokei Yisrael Shlachani Aleichem. When God originally said to Moshe, when you go to Paro, you tell him, Elokei Ho-Ivrim Shlachani Aleichem, the God of the Hebrews. The appellation of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei was not meant to be said, and the adjective of Klal Yisrael was Ivrim, not Yisrael. But when they first came, they said, Hashem Elokei Yisrael Shlachani Aleichem. What was Paro's reaction? Mi Hashem Hashem Shemakola. Who is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei that I should listen to heed his voice? So the Midrash tells us that he went through his encyclopedias of deities, and he said he's not listed. I don't know who this power you're representing. So they come back and they say to him, Elokei Yisrael Elokei Ivrim Shlachani Aleichem. The Elokei of the Hebrews. So two things changed. No longer Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and the depiction of Klal Yisrael is no longer Yisrael, but rather Ivrim, as Hashem originally said it. So we explained, and the Medrash says, Moshe, why did he change? Because Moshe says to Aaron, maybe the reason why we rejected, because we said it not exactly where Hashem wanted us to say it. We presented ourselves as God, as Hashem Elokei Yisrael, and he said Elokei Ivrim. So afterwards they said Elokei Ivrim Shlachani Aleichem, and he still rejected them. So we explained that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the appellation that God is infinite. That God is outside of existence, has no relevance to his existence. Elokei, or what the deities are called Elohei. Well, I mean, the deities means the powers of the nations, even the angels are called Elohei. So therefore they felt, and Yisrael, what is Yisrael? Yisrael is the appellation which represents Yaakov, that he transcends man and God, because after he had defeated the Malach, I lorded over man, Lavan and Esav, and the angel. So again, within his vocabulary, Paro didn't exist. Because as we said, Paro was Ayin Pei Reish. Everything is connected and purely represents the physical. There's nothing outside the physical realm. Okay? So till then they come back, again, Elokei Ivrim. Here, the Yava Moshe v'Aaron Paro v'Yom Elov Komer Hashem Elokei Ivrim. Now they insert Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. They're not saying Komer Elokei Ivrim. They're saying Hashem Elokei Ivrim. Elokei, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is what? Is the equivalent of Yisrael. That there is a power which encompasses everything. I mean, so once you're saying Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, you say Elokei Yisrael. But yet, it's Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, but it's still Elokei Ivrim. This Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the God of what? Of the Hebrews, not Yisrael. Aaron is the spokesman of Moshe. So it's Moshe and Aaron went. If you go back to the Mak of Dam, Hashem says to Moshe, Lech el Paro, Pabok, hine yotze hamaymo. and you should stand there by the edge of the Nile. V'marta Elov, Hashem Elokeo Ivrim. Okay, this is by Dam. So it's Hashem Elokeo Ivrim. So already Hashem, the God of the Hebrews. Firstly, Aaron is not mentioned there. He says to Moshe, you go and you say to him. What about Aaron being the spokesman? Aaron's not mentioned. Okay? Okay, now. Next one, by the Tzvardea. Hashem Moshe Bel Paro, and you should say to him. Yeah. He doesn't mention. If you don't send out my people, call my Hashem. Hashem here is not mentioned as Elokeu Ivrim. Just Hashem. Okay? By Dam, he's known as Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. Here it's Hashem. Call my Hashem. Second. By the Orov, it's also Komar Hashem. There's not Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. Now by the Tes Aleph, this is by the Dever, Komar Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. Okay, so there's no mention of Elokeu Ivrim, just Hashem. By the Borod, here it's by Dever, it's Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. Okay, just pointing this out. So over here, Parshas Bo, Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. Again, it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. But initially, when he started, it was what? It was just Elokeu Ivrim. It was not Hashem. After the plague started, then Hashem was inserted. Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. But Yisrael's never mentioned. Yisrael not. Send out my people, and I am Hashem Elokeu Ivrim. Just want to make it mention, Mark mentioned, it sometimes says Bo Paro, like in this parsha, and the other times it says Lech Paro. When it says Bo, when you went to his palace, you're coming to him. Lech, go to him, means when he's out doing his bodily functions. On the Nile, you're going to him because he's not in his location. When he's in his palace, in his location, and it's Bo Paro, come to him. When he's not in his location, he's by the Nile, then it's Lech Paro. That's the Balaturim. There's a midrash over here, and it's difficult. The Gemara tells us in Chelek that Nebuchadnezzar, that he sang God's praises to a point where his praises were expressed even greater than David Melch and Tehillim. Hear this? Nebuchadnezzar, who conquered the world, supreme, he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. There was a time he started to praise Hashem to a point, he just kept going, and he was going to outpace David Melch. That was his ability. So when it was reaching that point, what did Hashem do? He sent Gabriel, the archangel, and he said to him, smash him in the mouth. That should cease, because he's outpacing David. Here, he keeps going and going, and his praises are beyond David's praises. So he sends Gabriel to shut him down. He says, smash him in the mouth. And he stopped him. So they all ask, what's going on? I mean, factually, Nebuchadnezzar has an appreciation for God, for Hashem, even more than David. Why stop him? You wanted to somehow minimize Nebuchadnezzar because he's going to somehow outpace David HaMelech. That's the question that was asked. I once heard an answer. I don't recall that answer, whatever it was. Somebody was once speaking, somebody said an answer. But there's a medrash in this week's parsha, which, with that, we understand the Gemara in Sanhedrin. It's Gemara Chilek. The medrash says, there's a medrash at the end of Parshas Va'ero. After the borod, what does it say? Originally, when the hail was coming and falling, everything was being destroyed. Paro said, "Ani Hashem atzachni v'ani Yerushalayim." But then afterwards, he asked Moshe Rabbeinu to pray at Jitzis. V'yar Paro kichod motor v'aborad v'akolos. When Paro saw that it stopped coming down, the hail and these deafening sounds, so he changed his tune. So it says, so the Medrash says, Kach hein Harishon. This is the way Rishon behave. Kozman shehin bitzoro. When the Rasha has his problem, he's bitzoro, machni and atzman. They submit themselves. Kishatzoro veres, when the tzara passes, chozim kukulam. They go back to their corrupted ways. When the tzara is in place, machni and atzman. They subordinate themselves. When the moment it passes, they return to their corrupted behavior. Nebuchadnezzar, Kishoya Tzora Omar, when the Tzara came upon him, Anu Nebuchadnezzar Shabeach Umerome Mumade Lamelch Shmayo. He says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, I praise and I exalt and whatever it is. The King of Heaven, Dikom Avdoi, showed all his actions are truthful, or Hosei Dain, whatever, with all kinds of praises. Omer Rav Brechio, B'Shem Rav Chalovo, B'Shem Rav Shmuel Bar Nachman, Ilulei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Donis L'Vovos Machshavos. If God would not evaluate what's in a person's heart and what's in a person's mind, this posuk, which is stated, where Nebuchadnezzar says and expresses the praises of God, they're identical to David's praises. B'Sefer Tehillim, Nebuchadnezzar mishabeach, Omar mishabeach, mishabach. Use the term mishabach from Shebach. David mishabchi v'shalayim es Hashem. Nebuchadnezzar Omar meromein. He exalts, he raises. David Amar, Aramimcha Hashem ki b'lisani. B'chatze Omar mahadar. David Amar hod v'hoda levoshto. Came and Shiratz Megdula, but once the tzara passed, the problem passed, and Hashem took him out of it, Hiskel Mizgoy, he started to become pompous, to become arrogant. Shnema One Malko Voma Lodi Bovil Rapso. He says, I am the king. This is Babylon, the great Babylon which I built for my kingdom. Piskov, this is in Aramaic, Chisni, and whatever it is. He started to pride himself in who he was, his power. So here when he's on his knees, he's praising God. The moment he's not on his knees, he starts priding himself and exalting himself. Omar Kodesh Baruch Rosha Od Atmis Goyer. You mean to say you're acting pompously, arrogantly? Over Atzora Chosek Kulon. V'chein V'ya Parki Chodal HaMotor V'Borad V'Kolos. The moment Paro saw that the problem passed, the borat ceased to fall, the deafening sound ceased to be, the Yosef Lachto, he started to sin again. Umas Ola Masifim Lachto. Not only that, they increased the level of sin. Avol Yisrael, but the Jewish people, Tam Avone Basion, Posgenecho, when the sin of Basion comes to an end, I will no longer exile you. But Edom, that the sin will always be remembered because they never get over it. So what's being said in the Medrash? Nebuchadnezzar is praising God, but why is he praising God? Only because he can't tolerate the pain. So he has clarity, but the clarity is not really him. He's evil. Because the moment the problem passes, he reverts right back to where he was. So the praise is not pure. It's not something which is coming that he really appreciates it, because if he would appreciate it, he would have returned to his corrupted ways. So that's why Hashem sent Gabriel to silence him. Because if you take it face value, it seems to be Nebuchadnezzar, his appreciation of God was as great as David's, even greater. He sings his praises. Now, it's not authentic. Praising God's praise means we're not talking about lip service. Is that really the way you value God? If you value him, then you don't return to your corrupted ways. So since it would have been a misunderstanding of who David was and who Nebuchadnezzar was, that's the reason why Hashem shut him down. That he had to cease praising Hashem for that reason. He has his bar mitzvah. From the time 15, he's already 50 years old. The rabbi hasn't seen him. Hasn't walked and stepped into shul. Gets a call from his doctor. Mr. Cohen, you have to come to the office immediately. This is after a checkup. We looked at your chest x-ray, and he pulls it out. He shows him, you have 6 weeks to live. All your personal affairs, you better straighten it out, because 6 weeks, you're not here any longer. That morning, the rabbi arrives at 6. 4 in the morning, he's already waiting at the door to get in. The rabbi sees somebody who looks semi-familiar, and this person is wailing and sobbing at the shul door. And he says, what's going on? He says, you don't remember me? I'm, Jack Cohen. He says, I haven't seen you since you're 16 years old. He says, what happened? He says, next 6 weeks are very important. I have 6 weeks to live. You will see me every day here. Comes to shul. He's crying and sobbing. He's disturbing the service. That's how he's crying. And he's there 3 times a day, this and that. After a week, it's a call from the office. The doctor's office comes down and says, we made a mistake. Made a mistake. You don't see the guy anymore. He's gone, disappears. What happened? When you thought you were dying, all of a sudden you're there every day. Now that a mistake was made, I'm out of here. What happened? Same idea. We're saying the Jewish people as a whole, when the tzara passes, they learn the lesson and they're able to make corrections. This is an individual. But the nations of the world, even the greatest of them, when the problem's there, they have clarity. But it's only something which is very temporary. It's not real. The moment it passes, they're right back to where they were. The same level of arrogance. Therefore Hashem says, I will destroy you. The Jewish people, that when they're machniim, when they humble themselves, when they have the problem, they learn the lesson. Because they learn the lesson, even though we revert back very often, but it's not the same as the nations of the world. So Moshe and Aaron, they come to Parapos Gimel, they say to him, Ko Hashem Elokei Avim, Ad Mosai Mi'ato Leonos Miponai. To what point do you refuse to submit to me? Shalchami bi'abduni. Send out my people, and they should serve you. So Rashi himself says, leonos. What is the meaning of the word leonos? Targumo liskeno, to submit to me. And Rashi says, "Umigzeras oni, me'ato lios oni v'shofu miponai." The root of the word leonos is oni, a poor man. To what point do you refuse to be oni and shofel low before me? I mean, don't you realize you're no longer the monarch you were originally? Egypt is nearly reduced to rubble. There's nothing left. And you're still acting pompously, as if what? As nothing ever changed. So to what degree do you refuse to submit to me and to be humble before me? But he says it's oni. What's an oni? The Gemara says God cannot tolerate three people. One is oni balgaiva. An oni, a poor man who's balgaiva, Hashem cannot tolerate him. Why? A person, a rich man, that he's a balgaiva makes sense because he's in a position of power. He dictates, he controls. So therefore, it's understandable. But a man who has nothing, what are you being pompous about? Therefore, there's something really wrong. You attribute it to the person himself. It's not to anything external. Therefore, God cannot tolerate the behavior. You're an oni. You have two nickels to rub together. You're the ward of everyone else, and yet you're acting arrogantly. It's not acceptable. And that's exactly what Hashem said to Moshe. Tell him, to what point do you refuse to submit to me? You're destitute. You're really at the brink of non-existence. How do you behave as if you're on top of the world?
What are the other two?
Yisro, he sent a message to Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm coming out to the desert, and if you don't come out to greet me, come out for your wife. And if you don't come for your wife, come out for your children. So Sefarno says, why did he alert him? And he quotes the Gemara Nida over there, the Sefarno, because from the person, before he comes onto a person's premises, you should alert the person before you come. Otherwise, it's a disregard. Because the person, if he knows you're coming, he would prepare differently. He'd be in a different state. You're not going to catch him off guard. So that's why Yisro alerted Moshe Rabbeinu before he came out to the desert that he's coming out to the desert. Similar to this Gemara that before you enter into a home, you should alert the person that you're coming in, therefore you knock on the door. First, there's an argument about the Rishonim. According to the question you're asking is going to the Rambam, that Hashem had withdrew his free choice. Right? According to the Ramban, the hardening of the heart was only to give him the stamina to be able to stand up, to have choice, to have free choice. So that's the question. Here you have the ability to see it right. After seeing so much, how do you still see it wrong? But according to Rambam, that he had no choice. What's the Adnosai? How long would it take you to submit? Ask the question. Even according to Rambam, every additional plague says Hashem hardened his heart from the sixth plague on. But for Hashem already withdrew his free choice. What do you need a new hardening of the heart? He had no free choice. A person has a brain injury and he hasn't recovered, and therefore he operates on a 20% level. Is it every time there's a new injury that causes him to only function on 20%? If Hashem already withdrew the choice, he has no choice. Why by every additional plague, Hashem's hardened his heart? What do we need a continuous mentioning? He hardened his heart. So evidently, every time there's new hardening of the heart. Question on the Rambam. Exactly answer this, but it gives you a semblance of an answer. Every plague that followed the previous plague was another level of supernatural. Like we see the Borot, it was a whole different level of dimension of Makkah, of plague. So based on the previous level, at the previous level, he had no choice. When he was confronted with that, Hashem withdrew. He sees something, he has to contend with it. Hashem doesn't give him the ability to take control. The next plague is more obvious that God is in control. So you need every time you need a new hardening of the heart. God continuously has to withdraw the choice because the next level, there's a new level of recognition. Despite the new level of recognition, again, Hashem withdraws the choice. So every time there's a new plague, there's a new withdrawal of choice. That's why there's not ongoing, yes, like Hashem is like Paro. That's what we said in the past. If not for Hashem's intervention, it's impossible to win with the evil nation. He could outwit us and overwhelm us, then we have no way to deal with him. But it's only because Hashem intervenes, that's why we have the ability to take control of our lives. So that means we have challenges, and we realize both sides of the equation. But at the end of the day, we don't have the inner ability to take control. Hashem gives us that inability. And this is a bolatar sign or so. If you really want to do the right thing, Hashem will have that intervention to give you that ability. So we're talking about intervention. Hashem took away, it doesn't intervene to give you that ability. But do you see both sides of the equation? You see it. So to what degree are you not willing to submit? It's because the lack of submission, that's the reason why Hashem is not helping you out. Factually, at the end of the day, he had no ability. But factually, what's the reason? Because he's not willing to submit. I think that's what we have to understand according to the Rambam.